Greetings, it's Adam with Errata Non Grata, catching up on some news here that's been the chatter of the Atari community. I saw that this had been posted on Atari Age somewhat recently, and I know there have been some videos done about it, but I've only watched one, and that'd be Into the Vertical Blank. You can check out their channel. They cover a lot of cool things on their Atari podcast, but I'm sure there are several others who have been discussing this, but I just haven't had the time to go looking through what every take on it is. So I'm just adding my take here as well. As I made a copy of this and I went through it because I was very interested in seeing what it is that Atari currently has, as there was a list of IP that Atari had on their website some years ago, and then they removed it. And especially after they started acquiring all this IP from all these different companies like Accolade, Microprose, the M Network, Mattel Games, and Intellivision, a lot of people, and Stern, people are like, what is it that they actually own? Now, that all said, I've been, as I was going through this and adding my notes on it, as you can see here, I put a key at the top, AC for arcade, V for 2600, that'd be like VCS, but I'm just trying to make it simple. 52 for the 5200, 78 for the 7800, L for the Lynx, J for the Jag, ST, self-explanatory. Prototype would be underlined, 8 for 8-bit PCs like the 400, 800, and so on. And then, of course, there'll be some places where there's other platforms like DOS, or PC, or GBA for a Game Boy Advance, or SNES, and such. But there's some interesting things here. But again, they seem to be missing some stuff, as I'm pretty sure they would be the only ones that could own Atari carts, but it's not on here. It's on the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection, but for some reason it's not mentioned here. And actually there are several games on the 50th Anniversary that aren't mentioned in this list, such as Vector Sector, which they had designed, or Digital Eclipse had designed, and so maybe it's just that is on the list where you can see Atari 50th Anniversary Celebration. Perhaps they just decided to include it all under that package. I don't know, but again, there's just I wouldn't say that this is 100% accurate. Maybe it's like 95, but there's also some curiosities when it comes to like Microprose and Accolade, where there are some games where you would think that they have it, but it's very possible that over the years, with the IP changing hands as often as it has, that there have been certain games that weren't included in the purchase packages that Atari had, and so that could be why Microprose is missing some things. But at least for the Atari owned IP, again, that's where there's certain things that don't make a whole lot of sense. Like, I know that they sold Battlezone years ago to Rebellion, but I can't recall much else other than like Math Grand Prix and some other stuff, other minor things that they had sold that had, again, previously been included, and now they're not. And so we'll see if they get that up to speed. But of course, most of the games on here is probably not a surprise, come from either the arcade or the Atari 2600. Another very strange thing is how many prototypes that they have on here, and I underlined them. Now, some of them do make sense, like Aqua Venture, that was released to the Flashback 2 many years ago, and it's included on the Atari 50th Anniversary, I think, maybe that was a part of the DLC. But it's a fully playable game. You wouldn't even know it's a prototype unless you were told that. I thought I saw Frog Pond on here, but either way, like Black Belt and Bionic Breakthrough and Barroom Baseball, I mean, these games were never finished. Meebzork, Microgammon, Mind Maze, Monster Size, Solar War, Spitfire, Telepathy, Wolfpack, and Zari Arena. Yes, like I was just saying, these games were never finished, and so it's always been odd to me that they've still maintained the trademark on them, because it's not free to do that. So I guess they're just holding them in the chamber for somebody coming along, maybe like Digital Eclipse, and eventually finishing these games. I mean, I've always been fascinated by the likes of Black Belt, because that would have been a Double Dragon-like beat 'em up before Double Dragon had it been finished and released. Meeb Zork is something that's kind of like looked like it was going to be Sword Quest on the Atari 5200, but you were controlling Prince Meeb Zork. Weird name, I know. But Spitfire was a super impressive one. Let's take a look over on Atari Protos. Sorry, Tempest, I love what you do here, man, but could really update the site so that you don't have dark blue links on black. It'd be good time to update it. But Spitfire, as you see on AtariProtos.com, would have had pseudo 3D graphics for the Atari 5200. It used some kind of 3D effect. I don't know if they would call this voxels, or I don't think it would be polygons, but I'm sure this looks pretty amazing in motion, but I've never seen a ROM for that floating out there, so it might just be on a few select cartridges that haven't been dumped. I don't know, but that one's also been a little fascinating for the list. Zari Arena is another 5200 game that was never released. There was quite a few original games that were in development for the 5200 that just didn't make the cut because it got axed when Jack Trammell took over. But yeah, again, prototypes are a little strange. Or like Alpha 1, that's just the prototype name of Major Havoc, so I don't know why they're maintaining a separate trademark for that. Or Lunar Battle, that's the down here, that's the prototype name for Gravatar, which again, both of those games were released just under different names, so why maintain a trademark under them? I have no clue. And also I found some that were just repeats, like Soccer, Solar War, and Solaris are mentioned up here, but for some reason they were repeated on the list, so it must have just been a little mistake made there. And there are also a few games where I did a little bit of searching and I couldn't find out anything about them, like Zulu, or what was another one? I know some of these are more modern, like Combat Tank Fury, Atari Fit, and I think Championship Soccer. Sometimes the names are so generic, it's like you're not 100% sure. But overall, even though there's a lot of Atari 2600 and arcade stuff on here, it is interesting that there are a few Lynx games that are not part of the Atari 50th Anniversary collection. And so it's like, could those be included in the upcoming DLC? I hope so. I mean, it sounds like the next DLC will be more focused on Intellivision stuff, which will be cool, but I would also really like to see some of the Lynx stuff, because on the 50th anniversary it was a bit lacking there at first. I mean, it had Warlords day one, and then they removed it, and then they put it back on. Or sorry, not Warlords, Warbirds. But it's interesting to see Checkered Flag is on here, and that was a fantastic game on the Lynx. Highly criticized on the Jaguar for a variety of reasons, since it was trying to be Virtua Racer, but it just wasn't as good. Now, if they do put Checkered Flag, the Jaguar version of Checkered Flag, up on the Atari 50th at some point, what I hope for is that they would get the corrected version. There is a patched version that fixes the controls out there. I mean, the game's still imperfect just because that's the core of the game, but still having a patched version of that at least make the controls not so, as I recall, a bit jittery and very difficult to control. Fixing that would be great. But let's see, another one that I'm surprised is not on the 50th anniversary is Alien Brigade, which is a fantastic game on the Atari 7800, but not sure. Maybe they only got it recently, and that's perhaps it was with the Accolade purchase. I can't recall who might have originally developed that one, but great game for the 7800, and it had light gun support, but you could control it without the light gun. You could do it with the joystick. Going back through the list here really quick, Crime Buster, interesting 8-bit, like that was the XEGS era. Where they did that. Very good graphics on the 8-bits there. Days of Doom's a PC game, a very recent one. Dirty Larry Renegade Cop. That's a Lynx game that also is just missing from the collection. Now, granted, it's not the best game, but I do remember the first time I read about Dirty Larry was back in GamePro in the day, and I remember them. I think they gave it the top score on graphics. The sounds a little bit lacking, and the gameplay is okay, but not the greatest. But certainly an impressive looking Lynx game. As was this is one of my personal favorites for the Lynx is Dracula the Undead. I was surprised to see that showing up here because that hadn't been on any list previously. Although I think it was Handmade Software that had done that back in the day, and Atari had published it. If I recall correctly, there was also supposed to be a Jaguar CD version of that, but it's never been found, never released. But there is the legendary unfinished version of the Lynx version, which had a lot more content to it, but Atari cut it due to cost. They didn't want to have, I think it was like a 256K cartridge. And so that was sadly axed, and that's why if you've ever played Dracula the Undead and it seems to kind of end abruptly, that's why there was actually a lot of content, I think almost twice as much as what the production game shipped with that it would have had, which is sad. But as far as I know, that code has never been discovered, which is really sad. That sucks. But I guess it'd be nice if somebody came across it one of these days or just finished it. Goon Squad. This one I could not find anything about. I did some searching on Moby Games and just search engine and Atari Age, Atari Mania. Couldn't find anything about that, so I have no idea what that one is. I think Home Run's a original VCS game. Let's move on to the next slide. But Meltdown, I don't think I've ever played that one. Minimum, I enjoyed that one. I know the head game designer. I'm still friends with him. When he worked at Human Head Studios, he was behind the design on Minimum. And if you've not played that one, it's a fun game. I enjoyed it and played it a little bit back in like 2015 or so when it first came out. But there was a time where it wasn't available on Steam due to the servers closing down, which was too bad, but a very fun concept. Power Football, I'm not sure what system that one was on. Some more arcade games and such. Robo Squash, this is another one that I hadn't heard of in a while. I had this one on my Lynx originally. It's basically like a 3D Breakout, but also versus. I've heard some people trash this game. I thought it was enjoyable. I think it would be more enjoyable if there was, say, a trackball controller. But that could be an interesting one to see come to the Lynx on the whole collection stuff that they might do. Let's see. I'm not sure which soccer they're talking about because there's Atari Soccer on the first slide and then just soccer here, so I don't know if they're repeating it. Atari Soccer was an arcade game. I don't know if they might be referring to Pele Soccer, although where he passed away a little while ago, I wonder if there would really be any licensing with his likeness. I don't know if you have to license somebody who's deceased, but I'm not an expert on IP law. And just checking down here, the Undergarden, I don't know what that one is. Tournament Table was an arcade machine that used the Atari 2600 for its hardware. It's actually the very first example that I've ever discovered of a home console being adapted to use in an arcade machine. Triple Hunt and Witch Hunt, I'm pretty sure the same game. Like, Witch Hunt is one of the games built in the Triple Hunt, so I don't know why they have them separated out, because they don't mention the other two games that were part of Triple Hunt, such as, I think it was Raccoon Hunt and Hit the Bear. So I don't know. Couldn't find anything on Twin Racer. Maybe that's just because it was also somewhat generic name. Typo Attack, Tycoon City, I think those are more modern games. Warbirds mentioned there. Wizard being a prototype 2600 game that was released on the Flashback 2, but I'm surprised they haven't put it on any other compilations. And then Wolfpack is an arcade game, which I've not seen any prototypes of that, but I could be missing it, and I didn't find anything on Zulu. So that's the Atari IP, but again, it does seem like there's some stuff missing there, oddly enough. And then if you move over to Atari's other publishers like Digital Eclipse, again, they don't have Vector Sector on there. They do mention Star-Lords, which I did play at California Extreme 2018, which was before Digital Eclipse had been acquired by Atari. It was something that Mike Mika at Digital Eclipse had developed as kind of a 6-player Warlords and with a star theme, or space theme, instead of the, whatchamacallit, the knights and medieval themes to it. But what's interesting here is that with Digital Eclipse, they've put a few Intellivision games. Now these would, I guess, be Intellivision Amico stuff like Cloudy Mountain, Dark Cavern, and Night Stalker. But those are also mentioned, if we hop ahead a little bit to Intellivision stuff. Or actually, they're not mentioned here, but they are Intellivision IP as far as I recall. So sure how that all worked out. Maybe Digital Eclipse had purchased that stuff before Atari acquired Digital Eclipse. That would be my best guess. But I don't know. Night Dive Studios has a few things like people have heard of System Shock and Sin, and Forsaken and such, although I'm a little surprised. I would have expected a few more IP under them, I guess. GT Interactive also doesn't have a whole lot of IP under it. Like, they had a lot of stuff back in the day, but maybe it was just part of the deal that they only picked up those 4 games. If I'm recalling correctly, they got these games from GT Interactive when they acquired Microprose. But again, there's a lot of Microprose games missing here, and again, I'm not sure if that's just due to whoever had owned Microprose previously. Maybe it sold it off piecemeal to some other people. Like there was F-15 Strike Fighter, which was available on the Atari ST, as well as became an arcade game, and the arcade game ran a lot better than any of the home computer versions. Very impressive early flat shaded 3D polygon game. And there was also Battle of the Solar System that Microprose had. But that's not listed on here, and so it's a little bit of a jumble once you get to this point with Infogrames and Microprose and such as to what platforms they're on. It's from a little bit of searching that I did, I think most of these are were on DOS. But there were a few Atari ST games on there, and again, there's a video from Into the Vertical Blank where they discuss a lot of the ST IP that would be available now after acquiring these. Infogrames had some too, such as Bubble Ghost and Metal Masters. But I'm a little surprised in that there isn't more from Infogrames. Now, I do know that Infogrames had sold off one of their biggest IP way back, which was Alone in the Dark. I can't remember who they sold that to, but they obviously did not reacquire that with their recent stuff, which is too bad. But I'm pretty sure there was an ST version of Alone in the Dark, or a couple of them. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on the ST, unfortunately, but yeah, it would be nice to see STE games, TT, Falcon, and such. But that's another oddity on this list. Is at the very, very end, you have Atari hardware that they have trademarked, but there are certain things like they mention the ST and the Mega STE, but they don't mention, say, the STE, the TT, the Falcon for whatever reason. As well versed as I am in Atari hardware, I have no idea what this Atari Sierra is, so I guess I'll have to research that and do a video. But like, they don't mention the Atari Mirai, which was a prototype thing, but they mention the Cosmos as one example, or the Transputer Workstation, and a few of the other add-ons like the Atari 1050 or the Atari 810, even the XF551, which was just a floppy. All those were floppy drives. So it's a little strange that they have those trademarked, but then some other stuff is missing here. I'm not really sure why that is. But going back here, and then this is where it mentions Stern Electronics, and so you have Armored Car, Atomic Castle. If I'm recalling correctly, Atomic Castle was a Laserdisc game. Berserk, of course, Dark Planet, Frenzy, Great Guns, Lost Tomb, Mazer Blazer, Minefield, Moon War Rescue, and Tasmania. Out of all those, of course, most people know Berserk and Frenzy. And maybe Lost Tomb, because I know Lost Tomb got some attention back in the day. Mazer Blazer was on the TV game show Starcade, and it looked fun, but I've never come across that or most of these games. Great Guns was an early light gun game. It wasn't the first, but again, very hard to come across most of those. But it'd be interesting to see if something's done with that IP down the road. Accolade, we finally know what they got from that, which I also pretty sure Accolade did a lot more, but I think it's because sometimes they were just a publisher, and so like you would see the Accolade name on it, but it wasn't something that they designed or owned. They just published it, and so that's why this list is probably a little small, but it does include and Mean 18 Golf, which was released for the 7800 and the ST, Hardball, which was a good baseball game for the ST, Bubsy, of course, and I didn't do research into all of those. I think into the Vertical Blank I mentioned Summer and Winter Challenge were ST games. M Network, which had been announced a little while back, was a little bit of a surprise, and so I wouldn't be as I just said, that wouldn't be surprised. Be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised, but it would be interesting to see these included in the DLC, upcoming DLC. And then you have some other interesting things. And somebody had posted a comment on another video when I posted about Iron Soldier 3. And I hadn't been aware that Iron Soldier was recently included in their acquisitions, but it's right here. Between Head Over Heels, which was an ST game, and Jungo, which I couldn't find anything out about, so I don't know if that was a typo or something. But very cool to see that the Iron Soldier series would be available now to Atari, and so hopefully they add Iron Soldier 1 and 2 to the Jaguar collection at some point. But it's also clear that they've purchased some of the homebrews that have been done by the Atari community. I saw Holy Moly earlier. I can't remember who made that, but yeah, Crazy Bricks, which I remember seeing on Atari Age, and of course Bentley Bear's Crystal Quests and Fail Safe, which I believe both Crazy Bricks and Fail Safe were done by Pac-Man Plus. Another Lynx one that was a little bit of a surprise to find on here was Awesome Golf. I've never played that, but I'm not much into golf games, really. But could just something else to add to the Lynx list, so why not? But if there are any other Lynx ones here, I couldn't find them, or Jaguar ones. But again, Iron Soldier to me is one of my Jaguar favorites. I always enjoyed playing it back in the day, and so it would be really nice to see that show up, especially Iron Soldier 2, to show off a little bit of what the Jag could do. And then we have the Intellivision IP, which gets a lot more extensive now. I haven't done a whole lot of research into this because I never owned an Intellivision, wasn't super well versed into it, but it is fascinating to see that they picked that up when you had the Amico trying to eat the VCS's lunch, and it failed miserably at doing so. But some of these kind of seem like they're going to fall into the same realm as to what's available on the Atari 2600, such as bowling and boxing and checkers and football and tennis and some other things like that, where it's just like, those aren't probably anything that anybody really wants. Or you might go for the 2600 versions if you really had to have that sort of game on there. But I assume Armor Battle is basically like combat. I don't know which one version's superior versus the 2600 to the Intellivision. And I've not played these other games here, and so I don't know what to say about them, really, other than if they include a lot of these in the upcoming DLC, I'll certainly give them a try. Maybe I'll have to do a video playing through the different ones and seeing what they are like. Two of these I've heard of a lot over the years, Tower of Doom and Treasure of Tarman. And so obviously those probably wouldn't come with the D&D license, but I don't think you'd necessarily need those for those games to work or to be enjoyable. And so look forward to seeing what they can do with all of that. But out of all this IP that's out there, what interests you the most? Are you looking are hoping for more ST games to finally get some representation on these compilations, or more Lynx games. I lean a little bit more on the Lynx and Jaguar side, just because I think those kind of get the short end of the stick. Although, again, I wouldn't mind seeing some ST stuff. It's too bad that there isn't really much Falcon software out there as well. I think there was only 30 games or less released for that, but that wasn't by Atari. It was all by others. But yeah, I mean, there's still plenty Atari can do for future compilations or DLC on the 50th anniversary. But let me know what you think about this one. This one's, holy crap, we're about 30 minutes into this, so I hope you enjoyed that. And share your opinions below, and we'll catch you on the next video.